Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. Today, we're returning to the beautiful world of Dr. Joseph Murphy, who was a master in helping us to influence our subconscious mind and was a wonderful writer of affirmations and a great teacher. Today, we're going to go into a lecture on imagination. I've talked about imagination dozens of times on my channel, especially with Neville Goddard. And the more we do it, the more important it is. Check out my episode from Christian Larson on imagination and the mastermind. We've explored it in so many ways, but this particular chapter that I got from a book by Dr. Joseph Murphy, I wanted to explore some further. In particular, it's called Maximize Your Potential Through the Power of Your Subconscious Mind to Create Wealth and Success. And this chapter really talks about the importance of disciplined imagination, disciplining and controlling your imagination, something that Neville Goddard maybe doesn't explore in the same way. And I thought it would be good to add to our understanding of the imagination. Dr. Joseph Murphy had the same teacher as Neville Goddard in Abdullah. So it's interesting to see the commonalities in both teachers. The Wonders of the Disciplined Imagination by Dr. Joseph Murphy. Imagination is the genesis of all action. It's the mighty instrument used by scientists, artists, inventors, architects, and mystics. We are talking about disciplined, controlled, directed imagination. To imagine is to conceive something to impress it on your subconscious mind. Whatever is impressed on the subconscious is expressed on the screen of space as form, function, experience, and event. If you wish to be successful, you must first imagine yourself to be successful. If you wish to be wealthy, you must first imagine yourself as wealthy. Controlled imagination is one of the primal faculties of humankind. It has the power to project and clothe your ideas, giving them visibility on the screen of space. The human being is a spiritually awakened being who knows the power of controlled imagination. When we age, we gain wisdom and knowledge of the laws of mind. Age is not the flight of years, it is the dawn of wisdom. When the world says it is impossible, it can't be done, the person with imagination says it's already done. Imagination can penetrate the depths of reality and reveal the secrets of nature. A great industrialist told me one time how he started in a small store. He said, "I used to dream of a large corporation with branches all over the country." He added that regularly and systematically he pictured in his mind the giant buildings, offices, factories, and stores, knowing that through the alchemy of the mind, he could weave the fabric out of which his dreams would be clothed. He prospered and began to attract to himself by the universal law of attraction the ideas, personnel, friends, money, and everything needed for the development of his ideal. Just like a seed that dies in the ground bequeaths its energy to another form of itself by subjective wisdom, it extracts from the soil everything needed for its development. When it comes above the ground by a process of photosynthesis, it extracts from the atmosphere and the radiation of the sun all things necessary for its development. So this man truly exercised and cultivated his imagination and lived with these mental patterns of mind until imagination clothed them in form. I liked particularly one comment that he made. It is just as easy to imagine yourself successful as it is to imagine failure, and it's far more interesting. People who have visions, images, and ideals in their minds know that there is a creative power that responds to these mental pictures. The mental images we hold are developed in feeling. It is wisely said, that all our senses are modifications of the one sense feeling. Judge Thomas Troward, the 19th century psychologist, who wrote the inimitable textbooks on the laws of mind, said, "Feeling is the law. The law is the feeling. Feeling is the foundation head of power. We must charge our mental pictures with feeling in order to get results." Perhaps as you listen to this, you have a dream, an ideal, a plan, a purpose that you would like to accomplish, but friends, colleagues, and others tell you that it cannot be done. You may even say to yourself, "Who do you think you are? You can't do that. You don't know enough. You haven't the right contacts." Well, you have. The right contact is the God presence within you that gave you the idea. The same God presence can bring it to pass in divine order through divine love. Perhaps other thoughts come into your mind that scoffs at your plan or ambition. Opposition sets in. The way to handle the opposition in your mind is to detach your attention from the evidence of the senses and the appearance of things and begin to think clearly and with interest about your goal or objective. When your mind is engaged on your goal or objective, you are using the creative law of your mind, and it will come to pass. Lift your ideal or desire up in consciousness. Exalt it. Commit yourself wholeheartedly to it. Praise it. Give your attention, love, and devotion to your ideal. As you continue to do this, all the fearful thoughts will make obeisance to your exalted state of mind. They will lose their power and disappear from the mind. Through your faculty to imagine the end result, you have control over any circumstance or condition. If you wish to bring about the realization of any wish, desire, idea, or plan, form a mental picture of fulfillment in your mind. Constantly imagine the reality of your desire. In this way, you will actually compel it into being. What you imagine as true already exists in the next dimension of mind. If you remain faithful to your ideal, it will one day objectify itself. The master architect within you will project on the screen of visibility what you impress on your mind. An actor told me one time that at the beginning of his career, he was mediocre. Oh, he had small parts, but he learned the powers of his subconscious mind. Every night, he played the role of what he wanted to be in his imagination. He practiced it over and over again for 15 minutes every night, exalting the power of the spirit within him. He created a pattern in his subconscious mind, and the nature of the subconscious being compulsive, he reached the heights in his profession. 15 minutes every night, regularly and systematically. He ran that movie in his mind. He was the imaginer, yes, and he was seeing a premiere created in his own mind. He knew the power of the Almighty would back him up. It came to pass. Your imagination goes before you. It precedes your experience and manifestation. A young actress who is very successful told me that every night she runs a mental movie of herself, dramatizing a certain role. She keeps running it and experiencing it in her imagination over and over again for 5 or 6 minutes every night. She places a foundation under her dreams. It's all right to build castles in the air, but be sure you put a foundation under them. And that movie that she runs has paid dividends. Robbie Wright, a member of my radio staff, recently won a prize in a dragster race. He said that he psyched himself up before the race. He imagined his brother congratulating him. He imagined himself winning and receiving congratulations from his friends. He felt a supreme power controlling him in the race. Something came over him. That supernormal power responded to the image in his mind of victory, of triumph, of winning. The person who constantly falls has an image of failure. Oh yes, you can use your imagination two ways. Of course, you can use any faculty two ways. The person who is chronically ill and always complaining is a person who has an image of ill health and weakness. Whenever you imagine illness or failure, your subconscious creates accordingly. It has been discovered that many people who constantly fall have an image of failure in their mind, and the subconscious responds accordingly. Have an image of success. You are born to win, to succeed. Alcoholics know that if they use willpower or try to force themselves to give up alcohol, it drives them further to drink. Mental coercion, force, willpower won't get you anywhere. But when you contemplate sobriety and peace of mind and imagine themselves free and back at work, doing what they love to do, knowing that an almighty power is backing up their mental picture, they free themselves of the habit and are healed. Walt Whitman had a marvelous imagination. He said, "When the mist filled the valleys, he looked upon the mountaintops, and when the mountain in darkness disappeared, he fixed his gaze upon the stars." Imagination can carry you to tremendous heights or carry you to the lowest depths. Go beyond the mist and fog of doubt, fear, and anxiety, and get a vision of spiritual reality. A vision is what you are looking at, what you are gazing at, what you are focused upon, what you are giving attention to. That's where you are going to go in life. If you look at the top of the mountain and say, "I'm going to go there," you will. But if you say, "I'm old, I might get blisters, it's tiresome," you won't go to the top of the mountain. But you will go to the top of the mountain if that's where your vision is. You realize also the benevolent forces and the invisible presence within you will lead you and assist you in the realization of your dream. In your journey through life, however difficult it may be, remember, there is a holy place within you, the sanctuary of God, where you can feel your kinship with the one who forever is, the one alone, who lives in the hearts of all of us. Through the power of your imagination, you can release the flower of love and beauty from your heart. Imagination is the workshop of God. A workshop is where raw materials are transformed, manufactured, produced into useful objects and instruments. Likewise, our imagination are workshops where ideas, opinions, and concepts are transformed, manufactured, and produced as conditions, circumstances, and events in our daily lives. As we imagine, so will we become, and so will we accomplish, achieve, and possess, and know experience. When we consider for a moment all that we see and find useful and practical in our everyday lives has come forth from the imaginative faculties of men and women. The clothing we wear, cars we drive, seats upon which we rest, buildings in which we meet, homes, hotels, roads, and planes. All these and more, first conceived as ideas in the imaginative faculties of the minds of human beings. Yes, all the great paintings and statues are products of inspired imagination. As you know, your imagination pictures the ideal, and it is the ideals that lead humankind onward, upward, and Godward. Where is the beautiful Madonna depicted? On the screen of space or on the canvas? Doesn't it exist in the mind of the disciplined artist? In the golden age of Greece, that's 2,600 years ago or more, the Grecians used the law of mind and imagination. Yes, they knew the power of disciplined, controlled imagination, the workshop of the infinite. And mothers who were pregnant, what did they do about it? They surrounded themselves with beautiful pictures and statuary in order that unborn children might receive from each mother's mind pictures of health, beauty, symmetry, order, and proportion. Because the mothers would gaze on these beautiful statues and all that, and the child would be born in the likeness of beauty, order, symmetry, and proportion. Simple, isn't it? Of course, it's simple. All the great truths of life are simple. There's the old fable about the Persian prince who had a crooked back, who couldn't stand up straight, as he engaged a skillful sculptor requesting him to make a statue of himself, true to his likeness in all ways. But he said, "I want you to make the statue so that my back is as straight as an arrow. I wish to see myself as I ought to be, and as God wants me to be." Well, the sculptor completed it. He said, "Now place it in a secret corner in the garden." The sculptor did, and every day, regularly and systematically, 2 or 3 times a day, he would come out and meditate upon the statue, look upon it longingly, with faith and confidence that someday his back would be straight like that statue. He paid attention to the straight back, the uplifted head, and the beautiful brow. Weeks went by, months, yes, 2 years went by, but the people began to say, "The prince's back is no longer crooked. He stands up straight like a nobleman." Yes, and the prince went out, the fable says, into the garden, and behold, it was true. His back was as straight as the statue. Beautiful, yes. He is looking at it, gazing at it, his vision of a straight back. Wonders begin to happen as you imagine you are now what you long to be. Play the role over and over again. You will become that. In order to receive, you must first conceive or picture your desire, the reality of it. Some years ago, I met a young man who had been drafted into the army and was bemoaning that his plan to become a doctor had been thwarted. I told him, "Picture yourself as a doctor. See the end. You have a diploma from a fine medical school telling you that you are now a physician and a surgeon. Look at it. Picture the end. Wake up. Use the laws of your mind." I explained the laws of his mind to him in 5 minutes. While being a medical student, having a pre-med, he understood. He had a mind, and he began to do that. Sometime later, the Army sent him to medical college, and today he is a doctor. He saw the end. Having seen the end, you will the means for the realization of the end. You know, archaeologists, paleontologists, and others tell us who delve into antiquity that prehistoric cave dwellers carved pictures on the walls of the caves of the game, the fish, and the fowl or the elephant or the animal they wanted. And why did they do that? They knew instinctively that some power would bring these fish or these animals into their lives so that they could eat that which they pictured in their minds. Primitive, yes, but you see, they intuitively knew the laws of mind, and invariably these things happened. The particular animal would come so they could eat. These are the powers of imagination. They are within you. And I would like to tell you something I read by Dr. Cal Simonton. He is a medical doctor, a cancer specialist. He says, with the aid of relaxation, meditation, even patients considered terminally ill of cancer have recovered if they really wanted to get well. He discussed the role of mind in cancer therapy. This is what he said. I'm giving you some of the highlights of it because it deals with imagination. I started this process, he's talking about the mind, with my first patient. In addition to medical treatment, I explained what my thinking was. I told this patient through mutual imagery we were going to attempt to affect the disease, cancer. He was 61 years old, with very extensive throat cancer. He had lost a great deal of weight, could barely swallow his own saliva, and could not eat any food. After explaining his disease and the way the radiation worked, I had him relax 3 times a day, mentally picture his disease. That is, if I show you a picture of the perfect throat, and I am a medical doctor. All the cells are in order and everything else. And you are going to picture that in your mind again and again, realizing that there is a defense mechanism within you that is restoring your throat to that perfect pattern. All right, he said, after explaining the disease and the way the radiation works, I had him relax 3 times a day, mentally picturing the condition, his treatment, and the way his body was interacting with the treatment and the disease so they could better understand his disease and cooperate with what was going on. The results were truly amazing. Now he talks about mutual imagery, meaning the doctor is seeing a perfect throat, and he is teaching him how to see a perfect throat and realize the power is responding. He said, when I explained to my colleagues what I was doing, they said to me jokingly, "Why do you even bother to turn on the machine?" My response was, "I just don't know enough yet." That patient is now 1.5 years post-treatment with no evidence of cancer in his throat. He also had arthritis, and he used the same basic mental process to eliminate that. In other words, picturing yourself as whole, doing what you would do ordinarily. What would you do if you were healed? He said. Well, I'd ride horseback, swim, and all that. This same man also had trouble with impotence. He had been impotent for over 20 years, couldn't have a relationship with his wife. It took him 10 days of relaxing and mentally picturing the solution in his mind's eye. He now states he is able to have intercourse 2 or 3 times a week. So when he called me and told me about resolving his impotence, I had him explain how he did it, just in case I should need the techniques later on in my own life. Dr. Simonton was a doctor at Travis Air Force Base, and he speaks of the first case he treated in the Air Force. This case, he said, was that of an Air Force navigator. He was a non-smoker who had a cancer on the roof of his mouth, and also one that was larger in the back of his throat. The cancer on the roof of his mouth should have had a cure rate of 20 and 30 to 50%. The cure rate for the one in his throat was 5 to 40%. Collectively, however, the estimated cure rate would probably be about 5 to 10%, since it definitely worsens the situation to have 2 cancers arising at the same time. He taught the patient to relax and visualize returning to perfect health. He did this visualization 3 times every day, and the results were truly amazing. Today, he no longer has any evidence of cancer in his body. Dr. Simonton provides further insight into this amazing healing. I should emphasize that he was an extremely positive patient. He was also very cooperative, and after 1 week of treatment, the tumor began to shrink. After 4 weeks of treatment, the ulceration had no growth evidence of tumor, and so it was doing essentially the same thing, showing a very dramatic response. It was generally outside my experience to get such a dramatic response in 2 separate tumors in such a short time. After 1 month, there was 1 small ulceration healing nicely, and about 10 weeks after treatment, the roof of his mouth was essentially normal in appearance. The truly beautiful response as the one in the mouth, and on routine examination, it was impossible to tell where the throat had been. Only 3 months after he had been taken off flying status, this man had unanimous clearance from the head and neck tumor to go back on flying status and resume his profession. With the aid of relaxation, meditation, even patients considered terminally ill of cancer have recovered. He brings out that they must want to get well. You know, some people don't. Some people, as you know, want to be sick. Well, that's very interesting, and I thought I'd pass that on, showing you the powers of imagination. There are, of course, people who misuse that imagination. There's a businessman who's successful, prospering, and he imagined empty shelves, bankruptcy, and the poorhouse, and all this sort of thing. If he keeps that up, of course, he can go broke. But he's prospering. The things he's imaging don't exist at all. But he is running a movie of bankruptcy and empty shelves, no customers, and all that sort of thing. If you run a movie like that in your mind, It is going to come to pass. Surely you can imagine sickness, you can imagine failure, and you can misuse any power, but it's foolishness to do so. A coat, metaphorically, is psychologically covering. You can wear the coat of fear or faith or confidence or love or goodwill. You can wear a wonderful coat, can't you? You wear a garment, physically speaking, that is appropriate for the occasion. You wear certain garments when you engage in sports, other garments when you go to work, and more elegant clothes when attending a banquet, an opera, and so forth. These are physical attire, but we also wear mental garments. These are attitudes of mind, moods, and feelings you entertain. You have the capacity to clothe any idea in form. You can imagine anything. You can imagine what is lovely and of good report. Of course you can. You can imagine your friend who is poor living in the lap of luxury. You can see his face light up with joy, see his expression change, and a broad smile cross his lips. You can hear him tell what you want to hear. You can see him exactly as you wish to see him. That is, he is radiant, happy, prosperous, and successful. Your imagination can clothe and objectify any idea or desire. You can imagine abundance where lack is, peace where discord is, and health where sickness is. Imagination is your primal faculty and takes precedence over all the other powers or elements of your mind. You have many faculties, but your imagination, when disciplined, enables you to collapse time and space and rise above all limitations. When you keep your imagination busy with noble, godlike concepts and ideas, you will find it is the most effective of all faculties in your spiritual ongoing. Imagination controls the whole conceptive realm. Whatever prison you may be in, you can imagine freedom, can't you? Imagine yourself back with your loved ones, doing what you love to do. So the prison was a prison of fear, sickness, lack, or limitation of any kind. You can imagine your freedom and continue to do so until it is objectified. Then after gestation, in the darkness, the manifestations come and your prayer is answered. The man who is hurt on the ball field sprains an ankle, a tendon, or whatever it might be, goes to the hospital. Doesn't he imagine himself back on the field, kicking the ball again? If he didn't do that, he'd still be in the hospital. He'd never leave the hospital. He leaves the hospital because he says to himself, I'm going to be here 4 or 5 days or a week, and he's back on the ball field in his imagination. You know very well that's true, and you know very well if he didn't imagine himself back on the ball field, he'd never leave the hospital. Now I grant you, there are people who don't want to get well. They rejoice in their misery, as they call it. They get attention and all that sort of thing. Well, of course, you should want to get well. God's intention for you is that you express yourself at the highest level, that you exercise the highest degree. Yes, there are a lot of people in this world, friends, who do not want a healing. They don't. Yes, they rejoice in their misery. They talk about it. They say, my rheumatism, and pat on their leg gently, you know. Say my arthritis, my migraine, and so on. Consider for a moment a disciplined, talented architect. He can build a beautiful modern 20th century city in his mind, complete with superhighways, swimming pools, aquariums, parks, and so forth. He can construct in his mind the most beautiful palace the eye has ever seen. He can see the building in its entirety completely erected before he ever gives his plans to the builders. Where was the building? It was in his imagination. I explained to you, to imagine is to conceive. Whatever you can conceive, you can give it conception. It is to impregnate your subconscious mind with the picture of the idea, the ideal, and the invisible things of him from the foundation of the earth are clearly visible. Yes, so that soul, the ancients said, can see the invisible things in your mind. Where is the invention? Where is the new play? Where is that secret invention of yours now? Isn't it in your mind? It is real. It has form, shape, and substance in another dimension of mind. Believe you have it now, and you shall receive it. With your imagination, you can actually hear the invisible voice of your mother, even though she lives 10,000 miles from here. Mentally and spiritually, she is right in front of you, and she is telling you what you long to hear. After all, we are all mental and spiritual beings. Of course, she's there, and she is telling you what you long to hear. What is it you long to hear? She is telling you about the miracle of God that is happening in her life, how she is vital and alive, bubbling over with enthusiasm. She is telling you what you long to hear. You love to hear it. You can also see her clearly and as vividly as if she were present. This is the wonderful power you possess. You know very well you can do it. You can develop and cultivate this power and become successful and prosperous. Suppose your mother is sick in the hospital. You don't see her in the hospital. You have knowledge of truth. You are fastening that state on her. That would be a frightful thing to do. It would be an awfully stupid thing to do. If you know the laws of mind, you realize the healing power of God is flowing through your mother, and divine love is healing her. Divine love is guiding her. Divine love watches over her. Divine love dissolves everything unlike itself. Divine love is guiding the doctors and nurses and all who minister to her. That would be your affirmation. But your affirmation has to agree with your image. Your image must agree with your affirmation, and your affirmation must agree with your image. Therefore, you don't see her in the hospital. She is right there in front of you, and she is telling you a miracle of God has happened. How wonderful she heals, how she is touched by the Almighty. You touched me. I feel virtuous, and that's what you want to see. Then you are really praying, and then you really understand the laws of mind, and you are a good practitioner. But if you affirm one thing and you image another, that's called hypocrisy, and you get no results because your image has to agree with your affirmation. Nothing could be simpler than that. Often I say that 99% of the people don't know how to pray. Oh yes, they are using wonderful prayers, but they are seeing the father, the mother, the son in a jail or hospital or sick or something else. Haven't you heard a sales manager say he had to let John go because his attitude was wrong? Yes, your attitude. Changed attitude changes everything. The business world knows the importance of right attitude. Your mental attitude means your mental reaction to people, circumstances, conditions, objects, and space. What is your relationship with your coworkers? Are you friendly with people, with animals, with the universe in general? Do you think the universe is hostile? The world owes you a living. In short, what's your attitude? So realize that your attitude is that God is guiding you. There is right action in your life, and you radiate love, peace, and goodwill to everyone in the world. As you change your attitude, you change your entire universe. All phases of your life magically melt in the image and the likeness of your attitude. If you imagine, for example, that the other is mean, dishonest, and jealous, notice the emotion you invoke within yourself. Now reverse the situation. Begin to imagine the same girl or boy is honest, sincere, loving, and kind. Notice the reaction it calls forth in you. Are you not therefore master of your attitude? In reality, the truth of the whole matter is that it is your real concept of God that determines your whole attitude towards life in general. Suppose the teacher says, "Your boy is slow in school," or "he is retarded," or something. He can't learn very well. Let's assume you are the mother. What do? Let's assume that you know the laws of mind and the way of the spirit. Do you sit down in your chair or couch, relax, mobilize your attention? You relax first. Relax the body, of course. You become quiet. You can say to your toes are relaxed. My feet are relaxed. My abdominal muscles are relaxed. My heart and lungs are relaxed. My spine is relaxed. My neck is relaxed. My hands and arms relaxed. My brain is relaxed. My eyes are relaxed. My whole being is completely relaxed from head to foot. When you are relaxed, your body has to obey you. When you relax and believe, your prayer is always answered. If you do not relax, you do not get results. Relax and believe. The almighty power begins to function at that particular moment. And when you relax your body, you are relaxing your mind. Your mind becomes quiet and still. So what would you with this little boy? You would imagine your son right in front of you. And Jimmy is telling you, "Mom, I'm getting all A's. The teacher congratulated me." And you would realize the infinite intelligence is resurrected in the boy. The wisdom of God anoints his intellect. He is happy, joyous, and free. God dwells within him, walks and talks in him. You would see a light in his eye. He is telling you what you long to hear as the mother, he said. "The teacher praised me. I am doing wonderfully in my subjects." And you would run that movie. And you'd keep that up. And you would resurrect the wisdom and intelligence of God within. The boy which is dormant. It is there, and the mother can call it forth. Of course she can. What is that? Disciplined imagination. The boy will tell you objectively what you heard him tell you subjectively in that passive, psychic, receptive state. Now that's as simple as ABC. We are talking about disciplined, controlled, directed imagination. We are talking about the laws of mind. These things work. The modern scientist knows it. Your dominant idea about God is your idea of life, for God is life. If you have the dominant idea or attitude that God is the spiritual power within you, responsive to your thought, and that therefore, since your habitual imagery and thinking is constructive and harmonious, this power is guiding you and prospering you in all your ways. This dominant attitude will cover everything. You will be looking at the world through the positive, affirmative attitude of mind. Your outlook will be positive, and you will have a joyous expectancy of the best. A good example of how one man's imagination created one of the most successful businesses is Howard Schultz, the Starbucks man. It takes a person with vision, fortitude, and unswerving confidence to make a new concept succeed. Schultz was hired to manage retail sales and marketing for Starbucks, then a small coffee distributor that had a few retail outlets in Seattle. He was 29, just married. He and his wife left their home in New York City to accept his new job. About a year later, Schultz visited Italy on a buying trip. As he wandered around Milan, he noticed how important coffee was to the Italian culture. Typically, the workday starts with a cup of rich coffee at a coffee bar. After work, friends and colleagues once again meet at the coffee bar for a leisurely stop before heading home. It is a center of Italian social life. Schultz visualized coffee bars like this transferred to America. It had never been done, but he felt it would work because of the high quality of Starbucks coffee. Schultz envisioned hundreds of Starbucks coffee shops across America. Shops business people would stop at on their way to work and come to after work to relax. Shoppers would stop for a pick-me-up. Young people would meet their dates over coffee rather than cocktails. Friends would come for refreshment before or after the movies. It became Schultz's obsession. He was determined to build a national chain of cafes based on the Italian coffee bar. But the Starbucks owners were reluctant. They were in the wholesale coffee bean business. The restaurants they owned were only a small part of their operation. To implement his goal, Schultz left Starbucks and planned a new company. In 1986, Schultz opened his first coffee bar in Seattle. It was an immediate success. Schultz soon opened another in Seattle and a third in Vancouver. The following year, he bought the Starbucks company and adopted its name for his enterprise. Schultz believes that the quality of Starbucks will one day alter how everyday Americans conduct their lives. If Schultz has his way, a cup of Starbucks will become a basic part of American culture. His concept has paid off. Starbucks sales have increased ninefold for every year since 1988. Starbucks incurred losses for 3 straight years, more than $1 million in 1989 alone. But he never gave up. He had a firm conviction that this was the way to build a company, and that the losses would soon turn into profits. Once his Seattle stores were profitable, Starbucks spread slowly into other cities: Vancouver, Portland, Los Angeles, Denver, Chicago, and later to the eastern cities and overseas. Starbucks has become a household name all over the world and an exemplar of American marketing ingenuity. It has made Howard Schultz one of the world's richest people. Many people have a gloomy, despondent outlook on life. They're sour, cynical, and cantankerous. This is due to the dominant mental attitude that directs their reaction to everything. Even when you or your family experience something wonderful, your mood of joy is usually short-lived. If you are constantly singing the blues, a young boy, 16 years of age, going to high school, said to me, "I'm getting very poor grades. My memory is failing. I do not know what's the matter." The only thing wrong with him was his attitude. He adopted a new mental attitude by realizing how important his studies were in gaining entrance grades to college in order to become a lawyer. He began to pray scientifically. This is one of the quickest ways to change the mentality. In scientific prayer, we deal with the principle that responds to the thought. This young man realized there was a spiritual power within him, and it was the only cause and power. And furthermore, he began to claim that his memory was perfect, that infinite intelligence constantly revealed to him everything he needed to know at all times, everywhere. He began to radiate goodwill to the teachers and fellow students, which is very important. This young man is now enjoying a greater freedom than he had ever known for years. He constantly imagines the teachers and his mother congratulating him on his marvelous work, his wonderful reports. It is imagining the desired results that have followed the change of attitude toward his studies. If you imagine you are successful doing what you love to do, and you keep that up regularly and systematically, and don't deny what you affirm, you have to succeed. You must succeed because the law of mind backs you up. We have said previously that all mental attitudes are conditioned by imagination. We said you could use it 2 ways. Of course you can. You can use your thought 2 ways too. You can use any force of nature 2 ways. You can use nitric acid to burn the body or paint a Madonna on the window pane. You can use water to drown your child or quench his thirst. There's nothing wrong with water. The wind that blows the ship on the rocks will take it to safety. If you learn the laws of navigation, there is nothing wrong with the laws of chemistry. They are dependable. You can combine these chemicals in a wonderful way to bless humanity and to heal people from various diseases. Or you can go into the laboratory not knowing the laws of attraction, repulsion, or atomic weights and blow up the place. You can imagine it's going to be a black day today. Business is going to be very poor. It's raining. No customers will come into your store. They have no money. You will experience the results of your negative imagery. A woman called me on the phone. She had been trying to sell a house that had been bequeathed to her by her father. It was a $500,000 residence. "I'm a widow. I'm all alone. and I want to sell this place. But people don't have that kind of money today. They look at it and they never come back. I said, look, this is what you do. Stop your nonsense. Walk through this mansion of yours. You are showing it to an imaginary buyer. Yes, an imaginary buyer. And you are showing him the whole place, the garage and everything else. And he is saying, I like it. I'm going to take it. And he's giving you a check for it. I said, all this is your imagination. Yes, you are happy about it. And you are taking the check to the bank. The banker is saying, congratulations, you've sold your place. I said, all that in your mind. You're showing him the whole thing, and he is pleased and saying, I'll take it. I said, you dramatize that in your mind. You are releasing it because you are selling it in your mind. If you don't sell it in your mind, you'll never sell it. For all the transactions take place in your mind. You can't gain or lose except through the mind. Of course, you can't. All transactions take place in the mind. That's A, B, C. It's almost impossible for me sometimes to understand the thinking of people. These things are so simple, so utterly simple. A child of 7 can understand it. Now, if you can't teach it to a child of 7, you don't know it, because if you know it, you can impart the knowledge to that child. So you can't want to sell the home except there is someone who wants it in the first place and who has the money to buy it. But if I begin to say to myself, who has $500,000 today? Money is tight, high mortgage rate, and all that. Then you are beaten before you start. But there are people who have millions of dollars. There are many millionaires. You can't sell that home unless someone wants it. A, B, C. Infinite intelligence knows where that person is. That's number 2. And then you do the simple thing. Infinite intelligence attracts to me the buyer who wants this home, who appreciates it, prospers in it, and who has the money. Then you get rid of all these people who don't have a dime, but only want to see the home. You are not in the sightseeing business. Therefore, decree that only those who have the money can come to see the home. Then you are showing it in your imagination. You are showing it to the buyer. He is satisfied. You are showing him everything you would show him, or you should show him, and it's sold. Then that will happen. That's the quickest way in the world to sell it. One time, Judge Troward was walking the streets of London. He imagined that he saw a snake in the street. Fear caused him to become semi-paralyzed. What he saw looked like a snake. You know there are no snakes in London, but Troward had the same mental and emotional reactions as if it were a snake. What are you going to imagine? Well, the Bible tells you to imagine whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are honest and of good report. Think on these things and imagine these things. What do you about life? Is it going to be a happy life for you, or is it going to be a long life of frustrations? You mold, fashion, and shape your outer world of experience according to the mental images you habitually dwell upon. Imagine conditions and circumstances in life that dignify, elevate, please, and satisfy. Imagine your husband telling you what you long to hear. Yes, sit down quietly and close your eyes and wake up. Rip Van Winkle only slept 20 years. Sit down quietly, immobilize your attention, and relax. If you don't relax, you will get no results from your prayer. When you relax and believe, your prayer always works. If you do not relax, you do not believe. It's as simple as that. So stop kidding yourself. Relax. Let go. And your husband is telling you what you long to hear. He said, I love you, darling. I think you are wonderful. He is telling you what you long to hear. He is telling you he is promoted. That he is, he is doing what he loves to do. He is telling you what you long to hear. How much he loves you. How much he cares for you. how he is promoted and how life is wonderful for him and how happy he is in his new assignment. He is telling you what you long to hear. Hear it, and don't deny what you affirm. Then he will tell you objectively what you heard him tell you subjectively, because you're hearing him tell you what he should tell you according to the golden rule and the law of love. Always have him or her tell you what they should tell you according to the law of love and the golden rule. Then you can't be wrong, can you? I receive letters from men and women in different states of the Union. It's almost unbelievable. They say, "I want this woman to marry me. She pays no attention to me. Will you tell me how to pray and get her?" And all sorts of things. That's not prayer. I write and tell them that I can't imagine any man in the world wanting a woman who doesn't want him, provided the man is in his right mind. That's what I say to them. If you are a woman, I can't imagine you wanting a man who doesn't want you. To me, that's insanity. Love is a mutual thing. If you are in love, there's a natural law of reciprocal relationship. There's no confusion. It's like the woman who says, "I'm madly in love with John Jones." I said, "Well, how does John Jones treat you? What did he say? Did he propose to you? Did he give you a ring? Did he tell you you were getting married on the 10th of November or something?" "Oh no, but he smiled at me and he's nice to me." Good heavens! That's why I say so often, Rip Van Winkle only slept 20 years. If you are in love with someone, that person has to be in love with you. It's a law of reciprocal relationship. Love is a state of at one-ment. We have to love everybody. That is to say, we have to radiate love, peace, and goodwill to them, cordially, genially, and wish for them all the blessings of life. If you don't, you are in trouble, and you are in lots of trouble. So we have to love everybody in that sense. We have to wish for everyone what we wish for ourselves. But you don't try to force the other person. Trying to force the other person to love you or marry you or something, that's black magic. It boomerangs on you. It's crazy. That's the only word for it, just plain crazy. Now imagine yourself. If you imagine yourself, or if you imagine life as cold, cruel, hard, bitter, then struggle and pain are inevitable. You are making life miserable for yourself because that's what you are imagining. Imagine yourself on the golf course. You are free, relaxed, full of enthusiasm and energy. Your joy is in overcoming all the difficulties presented by the golf course. The thrill is in surmounting all obstacles. Now let's take this scene. Imagine yourself going to a funeral parlor. Notice the different emotional response brought forward as you picture yourself in this particular situation. In the funeral chapel, if you know the laws of mind, if you are not living in the dark ages, if you are not mesmerized, hypnotized, and brainwashed, you can rejoice in the person's new birthday. You can imagine the loved one surrounded by his or her friends in the midst of indescribable beauty in the next dimension of life. You can imagine God's river of peace flowing through the minds and hearts of all those present. You can actually ascend the heavens of your own mind wherever you are. That's the power of imagination. You can lift them all up because it's a new birthday in God. In some modern funerals today, there is no body. The daughter or the son says, "Would you have a memorial service for my father, mother, where all of us gather together and we have a meditation rejoicing in their new birthday in God?" That's common sense. It's beautiful to see people awakening to these truths today. There's no one buried any place, and if you think someone is buried somewhere, you are identifying with cessation, finality, and limitation. You are building a cemetery in your own mind. You know the frightful negative results from that, don't you? A teacher, a relative of mine, was examining the round towers of Ireland. I was with him. He said nothing for an hour. He remained passive and receptive. Seeming to be in a pensive mood, I asked him what he was meditating on. This is what he said. He pointed out that it was only by dwelling on the great, wonderful ideas of the world that we grow and expand. He contemplated the age of the stones in the tower. Then his imagination took him back to the quarries, where the stones were first formed. His imagination unclothed the stones. He saw with the interior eye the structure, the geological formation, and the component, and reduced it to the formless state. Finally, he imagined the oneness of the stones with all the stones, and with all life, and with the whole world. There's only one substance, you know. He realized in his divine imagery that it was possible to reconstruct the history of the Irish race from looking at the round tower. That's absolutely true. It can be done. There's only one substance, one law, one life, one truth. In the stones of the round tower is the memory of the race. Why? It's subjective. It's not hard and solid. It's alive. The stone is alive. There's nothing dead in this universe. That stone that you call inanimate matter, that's absurd. That stone is alive. Through the imaginative faculty, this teacher was able to see the invisible souls living in the round towers and hear their voices. The whole place became alive to him in his imagination. Through this power, he was able to go back in time where there was no round tower there. In his mind, he began to weave a drama of the place from which stones originated, who brought them, the purpose of the structure, and the history connected with it. As he said to me, I am able to almost feel the touch and hear the sound of steps that vanished thousands of years ago. Where does that novel come from? Where does the poetry come from? Where does the story of humankind come from? The subjective mind permeates all things. It is in all things and is in the substance from which they are made. The treasure house of eternity is in the very stones comprising a building. There is nothing inanimate. All is life in its varied manifestation. Truly, through your faculty of imagination, you can imagine the invisible secrets of nature revealed to you. You will find that you can plumb the very depths of consciousness, calling things that be not as though they were, and the unseen becomes seen. It is really out of the imaginative human mind that all religions are born. Is it not out of the realm of imagination that television, radio, radar, superjets, and all modern inventions came? Your imagination is the treasure house of infinity, which releases to you all the precious jewels and music, art, poetry, and inventions. You can look at some ancient ruin or old temple or pyramid and reconstruct the records of the dead past. In the ruins of old churchyards, you can also see the modern city resurrected in all its beauty and glory. You may be in a prison of want, adversity, or behind stone bars, but in your imagination you can find an undreamed of measure of freedom. I can now see Shakespeare listening to the old stories, fables, and myths of the day. I can also imagine him sitting down, listing all these characters in the play in his mind, then clothing them one by one with hair, skin, muscle, bone, animating them and making them so much alive that we think we are reading about ourselves. So Shakespeare's stories are stories about you. All the characters are within yourself, and all the characters of Shakespeare are within you. Use your imagination to go about your Father's business. Your Father's business is to let your wisdom and the skill, knowledge, and ability come forth and bless others as well as yourself. You are about your Father's business if you are operating a small store, and in your imagination you feel you are operating in a larger store, giving a greater measure of service to your fellow creatures. If you are a writer of short stories, you can be about your Father's business. Create a story in your mind that touches something about the golden rule and the law of love, for faith works by love. And you can have the faith that moves mountains, but unless you have love, you won't get very far. And love is goodwill. It's cordiality, geniality, it's goodwill to all people, wishing for them all the blessings of life. Pass the story that you're writing and its characters through your spiritualized and highly artistic mentality. Your article will be fascinating and intensely interesting to your public. Yes, the wonderful powers of imagination are within you. It would be a wonderful idea if all of us from time to time would recast our ideas. Check on our beliefs and opinions. Ask yourself, why do I believe this? Where did that opinion come from? Perhaps many ideas, theories, beliefs, and opinions which you hold are erroneous or accepted to be as true without any investigation whatsoever as to whether they're true or accurate. So archaeologists and paleontologists studying the tombs of ancient Egypt through the imaginative perception reconstruct ancient ruins. Of course they do. The dead past becomes alive and audible once more. Looking at the ancient ruins and hieroglyphs, the scientists tell the age when there was no language. Communication was done by grunts and groans and signs because there was a time when man did not speak. The scientists' imagination enables them to clothe the ancient temple with roofs and surround them with gardens, pools, and fountains. The fossil remains are clothed with eyes, sinews, muscles, and they again walk and talk. The past becomes a living present. We find in imagination there is no time or space. Through your imaginative faculties, you can be a companion to the most inspired people of all ages. God shall wipe all tears from all your eyes. You can succeed in all of your endeavors. You can surmount adversity and poverty and failure. You cannot fail but to be successful and wealthy. In a nutshell, if you wish to be successful, you must first imagine yourself to be successful. If you wish to be wealthy, you must first imagine yourself as wealthy. When the world says it is impossible, it can't be done, the person with imagination says it's already done. Imagination can penetrate the depths of reality and reveal the secrets of nature. Through your faculty to imagine the end result, you have control over any circumstances or condition. If you wish to bring about the realization of any wish, desire, idea, or plan, form a mental picture of fulfillment in your mind. Constantly imagine the reality of your desire. In this way, you will actually compel it into being. Your imagination can clothe and objectify any idea or desire. You can imagine abundance where lack is, peace where discord is, and health where sickness is. Whatever you can conceive, you can give it conception. It is to impregnate your subconscious mind with the picture of the idea, the ideal. The soul can see invisible things in your mind. Where is that success you deeply desire? Isn't it in your mind? It is real. It has form, shape, and substance in another dimension of mind. Believe you have it now, and you shall receive it. Through your imaginative faculties, you can be a companion of the most inspired writers, people of all ages. God shall wipe all tears from your eyes. You can succeed in all of your endeavors. You can surmount adversity and poverty and failure. You cannot fail but to be successful and wealthy. So I chose this particular lecture by Joseph Murphy because of imagination. It's something we've discussed a lot. But in particular, there is some really good examples of what to do in certain situations. For instance, how to imagine being healthy. He gives an example in first person of seeing a throat that is healthy and merging that using a positive outlook. Spending time imagining the healing occurring. Also, imagining the conversations with other people, saying that you're healthy. These are things that Neville Goddard teaches as well, and they work. Sometimes it's hard to imagine properly for these events. If you imagine somebody in the hospital getting well, they're still in the hospital. So you have to imagine them in a healthy situation. And there's pretty interesting conversation about getting the love of another. Here he's saying you need the other to love you, and you have to radiate love. So I would definitely go back to that if that's something that you're trying to manifest, because that's very helpful. And he pointed out several specific techniques that I really enjoyed. This is a later teaching by Dr. Murphy, and he's still his same old self in many ways. The story about Howard Schultz and Starbucks was very interesting and a very good example of how to imagine whatever your business is to become real. Anything is possible if you imagine properly. I've done my best with possibly 100 episodes on something that seems so simple, and that's imagining. But disciplined imagination is the key. Your imagination will work against you when you imagine terrible things happening and things not working out. You mold and fashion and shape your outer world of experience according to the mental images you habitually dwell upon. So you need to imagine conditions and circumstances in life that are wonderful, that have dignity, are satisfactory and perfect in every way. I hope that these examples help you and broaden your understanding of imagination. At a minimum, as my teachings often do, this is very repetitive. If you've listened to all my episodes, you've heard a lot of these teachings before. But as he explains, the most powerful teachings are very simple, but you must be reminded on a regular basis. Stop imagining that it's not going to work out. Stop imagining that you're not going to heal. Stop imagining that you won't get the money that you need, and imagine properly. Please leave in the comments how you've used your imagination to create your reality. All episodes of The Reality Revolution can be found at therealityrevolution.com. And welcome to The Reality Revolution.